Good evening, everybody. This is Marty from Dawgs blog with tonight's podcast on the Frank Carson et al. Trial on December 21st, 2018. Today's winter solstice, if anybody didn't know, like you need me to tell you, right? Interesting day. Robert Woody did take the stand today. Robert Woody looked a little bit different. He's quite a few pounds heavier. And the man seemed to have a real chip on his shoulder, too, whatever that's worth. Just my opinion. Take it for whatever it's worth. You listened to Noon Report. You heard the morning session. She just kind of did the preliminary building up to all the good stuff that we heard this afternoon in regards to Robert Woody and his activities that he says happened at the Carson property and whatnot. We had the judges on the bench at 1:40 this afternoon, and we had the issue this morning where Steve Jacobson was back there with Robert Woody in the holding area off the side of the courtroom, talking to Woody when he was waiting to come into the courtroom, going in there talking to Woody when he was taking breaks and stuff. And Marlissa Ferreira represented to the court that District Attorney's Office is still transporting Robert Woody to court, as they did, most of the time when he was in Tuolumne County, and they were bringing him down here for his court appearances during the prelim and such. Well, that's not true. The bailiff, the sheriff's department, says that Robert Woody's being transported by their transport as every other inmate that comes to court is. So I got to try to weigh who I'll believe in that. I think I'll take the bailiffs on that one. So anyway, so the sheriff's department did ask Jacobson to sit on Robert Woody because of manpower. He's in protective custody. He's PC. He has to be kept separate from everybody else. So Judge Zuniga met with Sergeant Swanson from the courthouse. She said she was going to talk to Luke Schwartz, who's now a sergeant, but she did talk to Sergeant Swanson. And he said the sheriff's office does not have the personnel to watch all the inmates. Well, that's their job. So Steve Jacobson was asked to sit with Robert Woody because Robert Woody is in protective custody. What they did was what they agreed to do is Robert Woody will be put in another room, and I believe she said it's the jury room that's when it's not in use, off the holding area over there, and other rooms as they're available. Apparently, he's the only one up there now, so Jacobson didn't need to be there in the first place, from what I heard, but what do I know? No DA's office personnel will be used to watch Woody again, as per Judge Zuniga. So, it's not... First of all, Steve Jacobson was active in this investigation, and active was Robert Woody and his family in some of his activities in this investigation, and got Woody, manipulated Woody in many ways. It's totally inappropriate. Sometimes it's not doing the right thing. Sometimes it's the appearance of doing the right thing. Even if he wasn't talking to him, it looks bad. They don't care with the many things that I've seen in this case alone. Obviously, they don't care. So they just want to do as they please, and it is what it is. And then, so that was resolved. And then Percy Martinez argued to the court Marlissa Ferreira had questioned Robert Woody, that they went to Frank Carson's office, and then Turlock, and then went to Mike Cooley's house. Now, a real common issue that's been going on in this trial, and even in the prelim, is Marlissa Ferreira likes to ask extremely leading questions. It's what the attorneys feel is a problem. Judge Zuniga feels it's a problem. She's talked to her about it hundreds of times. I mean, literally hundreds of times. She doesn't do anything about it, so there's no downside to Marlissa Ferreira doing it. In my opinion, what Marlissa Ferreira does, and especially witnesses like Robert Woody and some of these other people that she's put on the stand, some of the tweakers and stuff that she's put in the stand in this case, she asks a question inappropriately, telling them the answer she wants to hear. It gets objected to because it's a leading question, and then she asks it the proper way, and then they already have their answer. This is what I've seen for 3 years now. So Percy Martinez said Marlissa Ferreira told Robert Woody when they last went to Frank Carson's office, she made a statement. It was not a question. She told him exactly what she wanted to hear. That is not proper questioning. In fact, he called it misconduct. And she continues to do it. She continues to lead Robert Woody. It's an ongoing thing. Robert Woody had 30 years of probably 30 years of drug use. He's not the brightest bulb in the box, and he does have trouble understanding some things. So Marlissa Ferreira, it's misconduct the way Marlissa Ferreira told Woody that information, didn't ask him the information. That's how they did the interviews too with Woody too, to tell you the truth. He says it's material to the fact of what the people's theory is in this case. Jai Gohil argued Marlissa Ferreira is testifying for Woody when she says things like that, and it's also misleading to the jury. Marlissa Ferreira, judge says if she had a response, she said no response whatsoever, Judge. She had nothing to say. So Judge Zuniga read the transcript of that of the testimony that's going on with Robert Woody then, and she tells Marlissa Ferreira, of course she's been telling her this for a long time, that she has a terrible habit of asking leading questions. Judge Zuniga says Marlissa Ferreira was actually testifying. Robert Woody does not understand things real well, and so she was testifying for him. She tells Marlissa Ferreira, as she's done literally 100 times before, she has to stop leading. The attorney cannot tell the witness the answer and then ask the question. So Judge Iniga was going to leave it at that. Percy Martinez spoke up and said, Judge, that's not good enough. He says he was arguing with the judge. Percy was getting off on this. He has warned her before, repeatedly, continually. They've had an ongoing issue with objections to these questions that are sustained, ongoing. She's saying it in front of the jury that she needs to stop leading and things like that, but she doesn't do anything to Marlissa Ferreira when she keeps doing this. There's no downside for Marlissa Ferreira of doing this. Judge Iniga gets kind of a little bit in a huff, and she tells Percy Martinez she will run her court the way she sees fit. Well, that's what she's done. So that's why we're going on a year now, over a year. So jury came up at 13:58 hours. That's 1:58, 2 minutes before 2. Robert Woody back on the stand. And she was asking him about if he knew, Marlissa Ferreira was asking Robert Woody if he knew Corey Kaufman. He said he knew him from the Flyers. He never met Corey Kaufman personally. But he had said he had been in the same place twice with him before. One was on the incident, your ass's grass incident on Johnson Street. He couldn't remember the date that happened, but he was with Baljit Atwal in Daljeet Atwell's car that day. They were going to the church to donate some milk. Pop and Cork, when the milk gets close to expiration dates, they rotate it out. They donate the milk while it's still good to churches and whatever. When they were going or coming from the church, it wasn't clear to me which one. They turned on Johnson towards Linwood. That's the way Woody described it. He knows the streets. He even knew he was going north or south, east or west. He said they were going northbound towards church. They stopped at a house next door to Scott McFarland's house. He said he'd been there once before to drop McFarland off or something like that, so he knew it was McFarland's house. There was two people outside the house. They were digging up a stump in the front yard. He didn't know who the second person was, but there was an exchange of words with Corey Kaufman. And Baljeet Atwell and Robert Woody and Corey Kaufman had an exchange of words. And Robert Woody said, "Your ass is grass if you don't stay off the Frank Carson property." He said that Corey Kaufman looked puzzled. Nothing else was said. Robert Woody said he was in the passenger seat. Baljeet Atwell was driving. He didn't know who the other person was. Nothing else was said, he said. He had no prior conversations with the Baljeet or anybody else about stopping there and what they were going to do. It's just something they did, and he just knew to tell him his ass was grass, I guess, because they didn't talk about it, but he just knew what to do when they got there, I guess. He was asked if he saw anyone else next door. He said no, he didn't see anybody. What she's referring to, there was John Payton was out front in the house next door, trimming his roses or working his garden or something he was doing. When they left, he said he saw Kim Stout. Remember, Kim Stout testified that she saw Woody leaving the area after and talking to Kaufman after the exchange. He's known Kim Stout for years, and he saw her on Johnson Street. It was down a ways, is the way he put it. He always whistles at Kim Stout when he sees her. He's known her for, he said he's known her for like 20 years. He's talked to her a lot, knows her well. He always whistles at her when he sees her. They were southbound on Johnson at Linwood when they saw her. Kim Stout was going north on Linwood when they saw her. Baljeet Atwell says, she was asked if Baljeet Atwell said anything about the Corey Kaufman incident again, and he never said anything was said about it. He didn't recall ever saying anything else to Corey Kaufman or about Corey Kaufman again after that. Talking about Woody himself. Baljeet Atwell never talked about it. He was asked, did Baljeet Atwell talk about Corey Kaufman at Pop and Cork? He said no. He was present when Scott McFarland was at Pop and Cork talking about the neighbors. And again, Scott McFarland lived next door to the Corey Kaufman, where he lived with the Picketts and that those people over there. And this Scott McFarland's comments were prior to the incident at Corey Kaufman's house. Daljeet and Baljeet were both present when Scott McFarland was talking about Corey Kaufman. There was an objection about something along that lines. I don't know what it is. They went into a sidebar. When she came back, Marlissa Ferrer was asking if Robert Woody knew any neighbors that lived there, and the only one he said he knew was Dawn Poma, which is Kevin Pickett's wife or girlfriend, whatever she is. Scott McFarland talked of neighbors by name, but again, he only knew Dawn Poma. He knew about Corey Kaufman only by the flyers, and he knew Corey Kaufman was Scott McFarland's neighbor. He learned that through Scott McFarland. Don Poma had come to the store prior to the Corey Kaufman incident at the house, and so he knew Don Poma had been over at Pop and Cork, and Scott McFarlane was asking if he knew any of the people over there, and he knew any people that some of the things, the activities they were involved in. Scott McFarlane said there was a lot of traffic, according to Woody. Now remember, this is all according to Woody. Scott McFarlane said there was a lot of traffic in and out of that house on Johnson next door to McFarlane's house. Scott McFarlane wanted to know who they were, but he said Scott McFarlane did not say why. Scott McFarlane said there was a lot of drug activity, and he thought there was some type of stolen property activity going on there also. Baljeet, the Atwell brothers were both present, he said, during Scott McFarlane's comments. The next time he saw Corey Kaufman, he said, was a couple days later. He said he saw Corey Kaufman on the Frank Carson property on 9th Street. It was during late at night. Daljeet had driven him over to the property from Poppencork, and earlier Bobby was at the store 30 to 40 minutes prior to them leaving. Bobby Atwell was at the store, and they got a call from Bobby to go over to where he was, and Daljeet did not say where Bobby was. It was around 1:45 a.m. Now remember, this is on a Friday night, and the store normally is open until 2 a.m. on the weekends. The store was locked up, and they left in Daljeet's BMW. They went to 9th Street. He didn't know where they were going, he says. They parked by Bobby Atwell's truck that was parked by the 9th Street house. I believe it was in the driveway, but they showed a picture, but it wasn't put up on the overhead, so I don't know for sure. Marlissa Ferrer was showing evidence number 136 was a picture, I believe, of the property and the driveway. Daljeet didn't say anything. He said at the property, they got into the property through the gate that was unlocked. It's a man gate. They have a double gate there for vehicles. Then they have a man gate there next to it. And it was unlocked, and the gate was open when they arrived. Daljeet went in first. Robert Woody was, he said, about 6 feet behind him. He saw no other vehicles other than Bobby Atwell's truck, or heard any other vehicles. They went into the property, and where the double-decker bus is on the property, he said he couldn't really see anything. He said he kind of saw something like an altercation or something going on, but he said he couldn't hear anything. But he did see Baljeet Atwell by the bus, and it looked like he was in a tussle of some sort. She showed him picture 109, which was a picture of the double-decker bus, and had Robert Woody point to the picture, but no one else, including the judge, couldn't see what he was pointing to with his finger. In fact, Marlissa Ferrer kind of showed him where to point to. So they had a sidebar about that, and I think they're going to end up putting these pictures up on the overhead like they should have done from the start. But Marlissa Ferrer did have Robert Woody put a mark on that picture with a marking pen where Bobby Atwell was by the bus. He did not recall the white trailer that was seen in the picture, if it was there or not. Baljeet Atwell is about 15 feet from the gate, fighting with someone. And the other person, at that time, he said, was standing, and he realized it was Corey Kaufman. You say he didn't know Corey Kaufman. Okay. Well, I guess he saw him over at the house, according to his story. Daljeet Atwell, he said at that time, joined in on the fight. They're fighting with their hands and their feet, but all of them were, including Corey Kaufman, and Corey Kaufman was fighting back. He described it as like Corey Kaufman was a corner cap trapped by two dogs. He said Bobby and Dee were hitting and kicking Corey Kaufman all over, and saw Corey Kaufman on the ground after he got shot. He said the fight went on for a couple minutes, and he tried to get them to stop by pulling on their shirt. He went over to Bobby, pulled on his shirt, tried to get him to stop. Went over to Dee, pulled on his shirt, tried to get him to stop, saying he had enough. Enough is enough. But he says that he didn't stop. He said he wanted no part of it, and he started walking away. He turned his back and he walked away. He got about halfway to the gate, and he heard one shot. Remember, he heard one shot. He turned and he saw Corey Kaufman on the ground, Bobby and Dee standing there. He saw Daljeet holding a gun in his left hand, and he slid it into his pocket. Corey Kaufman was on the ground, lifeless. He saw a bullet hole, he said, on the right side or the back of the shirt. Corey Kaufman was only wearing, remember this, a t-shirt with a logo on the front. He was not wearing anything else other than what they mean by is a jacket or something. He had pants and stuff on, of course. He had boots and stuff. So he was not wearing a jacket, according to Robert Woody. He said it was somewhat dark that night, and there was not much light by the bus. There were no weapons in Corey Kaufman's hands. He saw Daljeet Atwell punch and kick Corey Kaufman maybe 25 times. And Daljeet Atwell the same thing. Actually, he punched 25 times and kicked 15 to 18 times. He said Corey Kaufman was on the ground when he went back, and he said he was in shock. They discussed picking Corey Kaufman up. He did not recall who had talked about getting Corey Kaufman out of there first. Who was the first to mention something? He said Daljeet Atwell was nervous, as was Daljeet. He said he was scared. Both Bobby and Dee were talking about moving the body. And Robert Woody said it was his idea to put him in the truck. Put him in the back of the truck. Daljeet Atwell and Robert Woody carried the body from the property out the gate to the truck and threw it in the back into the bed of the truck and left the body uncovered. They did not cover the body up. Dee had put the tailgate down so they could put the body in, and they went to the store with the body after some conversation. So what he's saying is, I think it's pretty clear, but what he's saying is there was an altercation. He didn't want any part of it. He started to walk away. He heard a gunshot, one shot. Turned around and saw Corey Kaufman down, had a bullet hole in his back or somewhere in his back. And then they carried the body and put it in the bed of the truck and transported it back over to Poppencourt. Robert Woody and Daljeet Atwell rode back in Daljeet's BMW back to the Poppencourt, with Daljeet Atwell driving the truck back. And she asked him, well, what did Daljeet Atwell do before he came back? And he didn't know what she was talking about. He was getting confused. He was easily confused. She asked him if Robert Woody, ever hit or kicked Corey Kaufman that night. He said no. The gun in Daljeet Atwell's hand, he said, looked like the one he had seen in the store before at Poppencork in the back of the store, and sometimes he said it might have been up by the cash register. It was a small gun. He never checked Corey Kaufman for vitals to see if he was breathing or a heartbeat or anything like that. And Corey Kaufman never moved again. She asked him why was he willing to help them do this if he wasn't involved. And he said he agreed to help move the body out of obligation for everything that they've done for him. And he said he was too scared to say no. He was afraid the same thing might happen to him. And he was afraid of both Bobby and Dee Atwell. He was asked if he testified at the prelim what he said, what Bobby Atwell did, and he said, well, he was getting confused because she was wanting something and he didn't know what she wanted, and he said he drove the truck. So she read the preliminary transcript. He testified then, after he put Corey Kaufman in the truck, that Bobby went back into the Frank Carson's property for some reason. He saw no one else on the property, and then Robert Woody saw no one else on the property, nobody else around. He never saw any indication of anybody else, and then Bobby went to Poppencork. They opened the store back up for some reason. Then he helped Daljeet open the store back up. He went to the side gate. Daljeet stayed in the store. He opened the side gate to open the gate for Bobby Atwell to, I believe he said he backed his truck up into him. She asked him, was there any conversation about doing this? He said, no, we just did it. We kind of figured it out as we go, I guess. He said Bobby got there about 10 minutes later, and Bobby had backed into the side lot. And at the time, there's not now, but at the time it was a double gate. It's not now. The fencing or something's been changed. He said Corey Kaufman's body was still in the back of the truck. Remember, that body was sitting in the back of the truck. It hadn't been covered, and they're driving around town with a body in the back of the truck. They decided to bury the body in the back lot of the Poppencork, or the side lot of Poppencork. Daljeet was still in the store. She asked him what the lighting was in that lot late at night like that. And he said it was real dark. It was kind of hard to see. There were some lights, but they were real dark. He picked a random spot to bury the body. He said they just picked a spot. He picked a spot, actually. And he used a shovel. They had a shovel, that little shed back there that had some tools in it. He got a shovel out to dig the hole. He dug a 2.5 foot hole, 2.5 foot deep. He was asked if the ground was hard. He said it was kind of mild, but not really hard. And it took him about 10 minutes to dig that hole. Remember, the Department of Justice went out there. The hole that they determined was about 14 inches deep, and they could not. Took them all day to go down 14 inches. Whatever it's worth. Said the hole was about 6 feet wide. Bobby Atwell was out watching by the gate, on the inside of the gate, just kind of being a watch out. It was what he said. After the hole was dug, he got a tarp, it was a blue tarp, and put it on the ground by the hole. He didn't put it in the ground in the hole. He put it by the hole. It sounded like he was talking about between the hole and the truck. He put the body on the tarp with the help of Bobby Outwall. And then he took a sheetrock knife, and cut the fingers and the toes off. He says the fingers and toes have the same fingerprints, and toe prints and fingerprints are the same. He said that in the prelim too. So that's why he took the fingers and the toes off. Because if you get somebody's toe, you can still get a toe print that matches a fingerprint. So he took the fingers and toes so there'd be no prints to match. He had talked about Bobby, about the fingers and the toes and the issues involved there. He put the appendages, they were in a plastic bag, like a small groceries bag, a black grocery bag that's out in back there. They're floating around or what have you. He put the appendages in a bag. Bobby Outwell, he said, helped remove the fingers by holding the wrist and took all the fingers off of both hands. Baljeet Outwall helped hold the feet. He said he was holding the ankles and the heels so he could remove the toes. He says he removed all toes, both feet. Corey Kaufman had boots on, and of course Robert Woody had removed them, cut the toes off, did not put the socks back on, but he put the boots back on. So he cut the toes off and then put the boots back on. He was asked if he saw anything unusual about Corey Kaufman's hand when he cut the fingers off. And if you've been following along, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say because he still has conversations with his family, and let them figure it out. Because there was something distinctive there. So now remember, Robert Woody said he took the fingers and the toes to keep them from matching prints, and then the fingers and the toes that he cut off, he put on the tarp with the body. Okay. He was asked if Corey Kaufman ever moved at any of this time, if he showed any signs of life. He wrapped the tarp around the body, then slid the tarp and body into the hole. He said the tarp was not wrapped real tight around the body. The hole was closer to the lot at Poppencork, from what he described, has an alley on one side, East Street on the other, and the hole was closer to the alley part of the lot than it was East Street. They covered up the body with dirt, and Bobby drove the truck out of the lot. Robert Woody shut the gate. He also left the sheetrock knife with the body. They were in that lot, he said, a total of maybe 30 minutes. He didn't really know what time it was when they got done. He was asked if there was any blood on Corey Kaufman when he got shot. He said, yeah, there was some blood at the property. And the blood spot got slightly bigger at Poppencork. Now, that wasn't his words, but he said a little bit bigger or something like that. That's not what he said in the prelim. There's a lot of things that he didn't say in the prelim. He did not recall the day of the week that this had occurred on. No one, he said, had rendered Corey Kaufman first aid or called 911 to get him help when he was shot. Robert Woody said that they had only gone to the area of the bus. It's a double-decker bus on the property. He never saw any weapons in Baljeet Atwal's hands. He said that Bobby Atwal did say that he had been to the property before doing area checks. He said that the discussions that they had in regards to Corey Kaufman were prior to the date that he was killed. So the discussions that they had with Bobby Atwal and property checks and Scott McFarland, he's saying all these are prior to Corey Kaufman going missing and being killed. He said at this last office visit to Frank Carson, Frank Carson had said people were stealing from his property on 9th Street. And she showed him a picture, and I have no idea what was in this picture. I couldn't see it. But he said he'd never seen it before. In fact, he had kind of a puzzled look on his face. He said that Frank Carson had gave Baljeet Atwal a piece of paper at that last meeting at his office with an address and a phone number on it. But he said he didn't see it, so I don't know how he knew that there was an address and a phone number on it. That really wasn't made clear to me. Frank Carson asked if they've seen any activity on the property, let him know. He will call law enforcement and file reports. And Frank Carson, he said, also continually said, don't do anything, don't hurt anybody, let me handle it with law enforcement. After that meeting is when Robert Woody and Baljeet Atwal went to the Cooley house. There was no one there when they first got there. They went to F Street, and he thought about going to the recyclers there on the corner of F Street somewhere. And he talked to TJ that's TJ Samra at the recyclers. And TJ, of course, said he knew Mike Cooley. In fact, Mike Cooley, I think, worked there for some time. TJ called the guy. He said he called him the guy. It was Mike Cooley. They went back to the Mike Cooley house and saw Mike Cooley and another person walking out from the house with bicycles. Mike Cooley made a friendly greeting to them, and what we found out later in some of the other testimony, Cooley thought it was his buddy, Kurt Bunch. Hey, KB, homeboy, something to that effect. That came out in some other testimony. So Cooley thought it was somebody else. Thought it was Kurt Bunch, one of his cop buddies. And then Bobby Atwal had swore at him, said, I'm not your friend, I'm not your homeboy. And then said, oops, sorry, I thought he was somebody else. This is what I believe Marlissa Ferreira wanted the jury to hear and savor for the next 17 days while they're off for the holidays. Woody did change a little bit of what he said about some of the things than what he said in the prelim. So, and once the defense starts, he is very hostile. He would get very upset. He actually acted like Michael Cooley when defense would object to, say he gave an answer and they would object non-responsive or something like that. He'd get a very angry look on his face. When they start cross, I got a feeling that he's not going to be too happy because he didn't look too happy today, and he looked a little bit bitter. Maybe it's because they're not in custody and he is. Maybe it's because he admitted to something he didn't do. I don't know. He does not look happy, and he's probably been told a few things too. by a variety of people. So that time, it was around 4:10 or so. The jury was sent out for the day, for the holiday break, and again they come back January 8th, 2019. One of the jurors came back into the courtroom and talked to the bailiff, and apparently there was somebody sitting outside that followed the jury when they came out over to the elevator as they were leaving. And it made him kind of nervous. So the bailiff told Judge Zuniga about it. She had the bailiff go out and identify this gentleman and see what his involvement was, because he was still sitting out there when the bailiff went out there a few minutes later to find out who he was. And Judge Zuniga said it's somebody involved in this case that's sitting out there following the jury down the hallway to the elevator. Well, we'll come to find out, to be honest with you, I think the jurors got a little bit spooked after the story they just heard and what was said. What it was one of the a relative, one of the interpreters, has only been in this country for a couple of days for the holidays. Was waiting outside for him, and he'd walked down the hallway at the same time as the jurors, and it was just a relative of one of the interpreters waiting for him to come out of the courtroom. So it kind of showed me maybe they got a little spooked. That's what it looks like to me. So that was it for today. That's it until January 8th. Like I said, I think that she wanted Robert Woody's testimony to fester in the minds of the jurors over the holidays, and those are probably some quite interesting thoughts that they're having now. I did try to watch the jury as much as I could while this testimony was going on, and they didn't seem to grimace. They didn't seem to get any funny looks in their face or anything like that. But they were very intent on what he was saying, writing a lot of notes, and very intent. So whatever that's worth. That's it. That's all I got. I got no messages. Remember, I have the PayPal button at the bottom of each report. You can donate and help support Dawgs Blog. Again, I'm not trying to make money. I'm trying to pay the bills here. Just trying to pay the bills and get some information out, and except for days like today, trying to have a little bit of fun once in a while too. So remember the PayPal buttons. Merced Tile Supply out of Merced, my sponsors. Talk to Doug down there. He'll take care of you. He really will. Good guy, really good guy, and got a lot of neat things at tile and affordable tile. But it's good stuff. I've been there several times. That's it. I appreciate everybody's support. And like I said, there was good to see, because Woody was on the stand. There was a few people in the courtroom today. It's good for people to get there and really see what's going on. Don't take my word for it. Come to court and find out for yourself. Good night, everybody.